everyone, Tula here with Key Wellness, and this is the first video of my new series called The Journey. In this video series, we are going to be exploring human consciousness and walking you through the awakening process. Let me tell you a little bit about this video series and why I decided to start it. I am seeing that there are a lot of people who are hurting and looking for hope. There's also a lot of people who, even without hurting, they just have this sense that something is missing, there should be more to life. They just are looking, they're searching for answers. Something inside of them is telling them that there is more to life than this. And in my first series, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, I talk about this process from a scientific standpoint. I talk about all of the science and how manifesting and consciousness and everything works from a scientific standpoint, from the standpoint of quantum physics. And a lot of that information was drawn from my experience and my understanding and learning as a remote viewer. And I might have explained in that video series in bits and pieces how the U.S. government had a remote viewing program when they learned about psychic spy programs that other countries were using to get information about the U.S. And in that video series, I talk about the science that they discovered that makes this possible, what it is about the human biomechanical machine that enables us to access information that is beyond the physical five senses. So you can turn to that series when the student is ready to learn about the scientific aspect, the quantum physics behind it. That said, everything that scientists are learning now, all of this quantum physics that they are discovering, the quantum field, the singularity, and all of this is really not new. What they're discovering is that they are just giving a new language, new words, a scientific approach to what the ancients have known from the very start, for thousands of years, going all the way back to the Sumerian tablets that were discovered in Iraq. So this information is not necessarily new. In that series, it's couched from today's modern science. In this series, The Journey, we are going to be taking a more esoteric approach to the information. And what we'll be exploring is what has been garnered from ancient texts. And this is going to include information coming from, as I mentioned, the Sumerian tablets, texts from the Nag Hammadi library, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Ethiopian Bible, which rolls into what most people know as the Bible today, the modern Bible, which is just a small piece of the Ethiopian Bible. We will be pulling from Hermeticism, Gnosticism, Kabbalah, a little bit of Rosicrucianism, and Freemasonry, because the information is the same. What you're going to learn in this series is that it all goes back to the same thing. And today's modern quantum physics is just reiterating and couching it in a scientific language. All the same information, though. So we'll have a more esoteric approach in this journey. And the reason for that is logic drives the quantum physics or scientific approach. But this is far more than logic. This has a spiritual, emotional, and mental aspect to it. So the picture is incomplete until you approach it from this esoteric perspective. The other reason we're going to dive into the esoteric perspective is because it is so misunderstood. If you are new to this, if you've never looked at it, the hair may be standing up on the back of your neck, because most people, whenever they have heard about anything that has to do with ancient esoteric or mystical practices, they immediately think it's demonic. They immediately think that it's evil. They hear the word occult and they think of witchcraft. The word occult simply means hidden. And this information has been around for millennia. And it is occulted, it is hidden, it has always been passed down from generation to generation, from a master to a hand-picked student or initiate, and then it was verbally transferred. They didn't write this down. And the reason they didn't write it down is because they didn't want the masses to have access to it. Why? The reason for that is simple. It's called power and control. The information is extremely powerful when you find out what you really are and what you are really capable of. You will understand why someone that wanted to have power over you would not want you to know about that. At the same time, those who are willing to share the information also understand that with great knowledge and great power comes great responsibility. Therefore, you don't throw pearls before swine. Therefore, you don't hand the keys to the kingdom to just anyone. And so this information will be made available to you on a very basic level so that you can understand how it works. From there, someone who truly wants to become an initiate, someone who truly wants to delve and dive, will either do one of a few things. First of all, there's those who they got the superficial knowledge. I get it. I don't believe it. I get it. Okay, that's great, but it's never going to work for me. Okay, these people are not really meant to develop to that stage, or they're not ready yet at this point in their life. But others, those that truly want to do something, will go on one of three tracks. Number one, they will do the study themselves. They'll do all the hard work. They will spend hours upon hours finding all kinds of books and resources, referencing and cross-referencing to make sure they understand it completely. They will do the deep dive, self-introspection, shadow work, dealing with their own demons, and bringing themselves through this process. That is the way I did it, and it has taken me years, because if you don't do a thorough job, you can be deceived, you can get lost, you can waste a lot of time. So that's one track. And I can make that track a little easier for you by pointing you to references, like I just did. I listed some of the belief systems or practices or schools of knowledge from where I will be pulling. So you're welcome to go research those, right? My goal is not to hide things from you. My goal is to make sure that the information I give you is given to you correctly so you have a solid foundation under your feet and your basic questions are answered. The second track that someone may take is to say, this is really interesting. I really want to understand it some more, and then just start following other places that you might find, other resources on the web or wherever you might find these, and learn from others. And then again, be careful that you cross-reference. There's so much misinformation out there, you don't want to be led astray. And you'll know you've been led astray when it's not working. It's just, you'll start to see the inconsistencies. The other danger there is that you get kind of hooked into, there's a lot of new age stuff out there, and there's this whole aspect or subculture of, they're just trying to make it a little bit too woo-woo, okay? And so they're really not grounded. And so you could kind of end up being pulled away with superficial, it's really not deep, and it's really not grounded, and it's really not well informed. However, there are very many great resources out there where you can get solid knowledge, but you'll have to do the work to find that. And then finally, I do consulting as well. And so I do take one-on-one initiates, and that is to give you the full benefit of one-on-one help, sharing the deeper knowledge that I have garnered through decades of study, but also working with you one-on-one so that your development is tailored to you everybody has a different path and everybody is headed in a different direction. And so you don't want to take the generic path. You want to know exactly where you're headed. You want to find out those deep secrets that are specific to you. And you want to deal with and tackle your specific challenges. That's the traditional master initiate relationship, and I'm available for that. So what can you expect from this series? I will definitely be giving you a broad base, and as I do in all of my other videos, I'm going to be talking very practically. I'm going to be speaking in terms that are not so esoteric and so deep that you simply can't grasp. That's what I see a lot of. There's a lot of great masters out there. They know what they're talking about. Their information is good, but they're starting at a level that is far beyond the comprehension of the average person that is out there just beginning their journey saying, I have questions. Something's not right, but I don't know what it is. And then you listen to something and someone's talking about the 14th dimension and demiurge and archons and all of these other things, and you're sitting there going, where do I start? So this is it. This is the where you start, and then you can choose your path from here. And if you choose no path, that's enough information. Now you get it. That's fine too. But this is to fill that gap for all of those people that I see commenting under other threads saying, that's great, but how do I apply that? What are the nuts and bolts? Give it to me in a simple, practical explanation. I want to know more than just the theory. I want to know how to do this. I want to know how to apply it directly to my life. And so that's what this is for. Now, in order for this to work, if I do an exercise like listen exercise, imagine this, try this, you should try it. Don't just take my word for it. Try it. See how it works for you. It's kind of like test driving a car. The other thing is be willing to do the work and be willing to be interactive. If you have a question, I would like to know. You can write things in the comments. You can ask directly, or you could message me and you could say, I'd like to know more about this, or could you do a video on XYZ? So I'm here to help. I want to break that barrier that I see out there so much, that people have this information. It's clear to me that some of them are very well versed, but they're speaking at a level that is far beyond the understanding of someone who's just getting started. So I'm trying to create a bridge, and then once you get to the other side of this bridge, you can decide how far you want to go with this and what path you would like to choose. Right now, you don't know what you don't know. At least when you get over the bridge, you'll know what you don't know, and you can choose from there. So let's dive in. And I'm going to start with an exercise. I want you to imagine that you fell into a deep sleep. You climbed into one of those sensory deprivation tanks, and you fell into a deep sleep. You wake up, and at first you don't know where you are, and then it hits you that you had fallen asleep in this sensory deprivation tank. So when you wake back up, you can't see anything. You can't hear anything. You can't feel anything. You can't smell anything. And you're just waking up, and you think you remember where you were, and now you're wondering, did you die? Are you still here? Are you still alive? How would you check that? Write it in the comments. What would you do to make sure that you're still here? The you that you know yourself to be. How do you know you're still here if you can't see anything? You can't hear anything. You can't smell anything. And upon waking, you don't feel anything. Wouldn't that make you wonder whether you're still alive? Whether you exist? And so, with that thought in mind, how do you verify that you do in fact still exist? If you said, well, I think I would reach down and pat myself. I would touch myself. I would, clap my hands together or hit my hands to my arms or my legs, I would feel myself, feel for my existence. And you would be right. That's what most people say they would do. And that makes sense. So let me now ask you, what if you couldn't do that? What if you didn't have a body and the you that normally exists doesn't have that sense of touch? And so that is not an option. What do you have left to verify that you do in fact still exist? What could you do? You're in a chamber where there is nothing to taste. So you can't taste anything to see if you're still there in terms of your sense of taste. And no sound uttered outside of the chamber can be heard inside the chamber. So you can't rely on your sense of hearing something outside, and you can't see because it's completely dark. So you're in this black void. So what do you have left? Write that in the comments, how you would handle that situation if you were disembodied. If you answered that you would utter a sound, that you would speak or yell or make a noise, you would be right, because that's all that you have left to do. Now I want you to think. I want you to think about the Big Bang Theory. I want you to think about the beginning of Genesis, and even the ancient texts say the same thing, that the primordial form of existence, the base of everything, is sound. There was a big bang, or the Lord or God said, spoke, let there be light. So what are we doing? We're using sound to create vision, and suddenly there is sound, so you know you exist, and there is light, so there are things to see. But if you are the only thing that exists, and you say, let there be light, then all that exists so far is the sound you utter and the light you emit. But what is it lighting? There's nothing to light yet, because it's just you. You're the be-all, you're the end-all, you are everything. So how do you know you exist? Aside from being able to utter a sound, and if there's nothing around you, do you hear the sound? Because sound vibrates, it has to vibrate something to make a noise. Otherwise, it's just vibration. Until it vibrates off of something else, you don't hear it. Think about that. You don't hear the wind until it actually makes your eardrum move or rattles in the trees and the leaves, or blows against something, gets caught in a hollow, or makes something shake. But other than that, when sound is just vibrating, it doesn't make a sound until it causes something physical to actually vibrate. And then that is how your mind is able to translate that vibration into sound. And depending on the frequency of that vibration, your mind translates it to different types of sounds. What am I getting at here? First of all, I'm getting at the fact that sound vibration is primordial. That is the first thing. Sound is what everything is made from. Specifically, sound is vibration. And this is why Nikola Tesla, and I know it sounds like I'm being scientific, but we're going somewhere with this, someplace esoteric with this. But Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Nothing exists but vibration. Everything is vibration. Everything is a wave. The primordial being, the very first thing, God, source, whatever you want to call it, couldn't know it existed until it did something to verify its existence. Right? Go back to the sensory deprivation tank. You don't know you exist, and if you're disembodied, you can't touch yourself. So the only way you can know you exist is if you utter a sound. And that's exactly what happened. A sound was uttered, and it created a vibration. And from vibration and frequency, and light is just vibration and frequency, first light was created. So now there's your disembodied presence that is capable of uttering sound, i.e. making vibration. And that vibration, that sound, now at a high enough frequency becomes light. Let there be light. So there you are. You're this being, you can utter sound, and it can create light. But there's nothing to light. But you have the ability to create. So what would you do to verify your existence? What would you do to begin to discover yourself, to understand yourself? Otherwise, you don't exist. If you're consciousness and you're not doing anything and nothing's happening, then do you really exist? And so you decide, I need a point of reference outside of myself. I need to get a different perspective of myself. It's like looking in a mirror and going, oh, that's me. And so the primordial being, source, God, whatever you want to say, this being, this consciousness says, I will fragment myself and I will make myself into different fragments of my whole consciousness so that I can experience myself in different ways. And I will act like a bunch of small mirrors where my essence goes out and then comes back to me with information about myself. And by this means, I can begin to discover myself, collect data on myself, begin to understand myself. Now, if that's hard to understand, then let's take this, because we are made in the likeness, right, of our Creator. We are made in the likeness of our Creator. How do we know who we are? Let's take a newborn baby. That newborn baby is not cognizant. It has no thoughts yet, okay? I mean, what's it going to think? It doesn't have any experiences, and our thoughts are either worries about the future or memories of the past. And so there's nothing for this baby to think. So thought isn't a thing. And everything is a new experience, so there's no frame of reference. Everything is either weird or everything is either just normal, because there's no frame of reference. There's no comparison. Unusual and usual are both forms of comparing what's normal versus what's not normal, what usually happens versus what doesn't usually happen. And if you have zero history, neither applies. So how does a newborn just into the world understand itself? Through the experiences and the people around it. And that is how a newborn begins to understand who they are. And have you ever seen a baby seeing themselves in the mirror for the first time? We are imitating our Creator through this process. And the Creator has done the same thing. And when you read these ancient texts, basically what we're learning is that the Creator said, understand myself. I am going to recreate myself in another form to mirror back to me what I am. And so, what is creation? There is this central consciousness that we started with, and we imagined it by imagining ourselves in that sensory deprivation chamber. And what it has done is created many versions of itself through which to experience the universe. And each one of us is a fragment of that wholeness, experiencing our lives. So if you could think of it as a central consciousness that knows everything because it is everything, and yet it knows nothing because it can't experience anything outside of itself unless it experiences it through something that is not a part of it. Think about that. If you are everything, how do you know anything outside yourself? There is nothing outside yourself. So the only way to know yourself is relative to something else. So you create something that is outside yourself, separate consciousness that is going to feed you back the information to give a sense of comparison or relativity to your central consciousness. So what does that mean for each and every one of us as being a piece of that consciousness? We are all the same consciousness. All it's doing is experiencing itself through our eyes. So when we say that separation is an illusion, that's what we mean, because I am just consciousness experiencing the world through my eyes. You are the same consciousness experiencing the world through your eyes. So the way to see yourself, to begin this journey, and this is it makes sense when you hear the words and you think about it, but it is so hard because we are framed in and born into and forever trapped in this physical world. So it is very hard to step outside of your physical body and imagine being consciousness, all consciousness that has chosen to channel itself to experience the world through all of these different separate consciousness, one of which the many is you. And whatever you do, you are giving that information back to that central consciousness. It is experiencing life through you, just like it's experiencing itself, its life, through me. So we are the same consciousness. We're the same. We go back to the same source. And the way to imagine that is if you could imagine yourself being that consciousness and then projecting itself into and through you. Here's another way to imagine it. Do you remember being a child and maybe putting on a mask for Halloween? And imagine as you're picking that up to your face, there's the two eye holes, and you line those two eye holes up to your eyes. It's the same way if you could imagine the central consciousness deciding to be you, see the world through you, your life experiences. That's a unique set of experiences for the main consciousness, and you are the mask. So it puts you on, and it experiences through you. This is the way we're going to go about this journey. This is going to be our frame of reference. And the reason we're going to have this frame of reference is because this is what the ancients have said, and this is what modern physics verifies. That there is a central consciousness, and it is experiencing itself through us for the reasons I explained, going back to the sensory deprivation tank. And when you see everything from that perspective, it all begins to make sense. Now, before closing, I want to make two clarifications. And the first one is earlier, to help walk you through this process, knowing that you're coming from a very physical viewpoint. When I explained how consciousness divided itself into fragments, it fragmented itself into all these tiny little mirrors that would all reflect back information, and everything with a consciousness is reflecting that back. Okay, so that way it can experience everything through all of these fragmented little mirrors that was the example that I used. Having a physical mindset coming from a perspective of a physical fragmented world of separateness, I know in your mind that what you envisioned is that everything is a separate piece. I want to back up and make a clarification. I use that because it's a good frame of reference to give you the concept, knowing that your mind is coming from a physical mindset. You have only known a physical world. However, the way that really works is those fragments are not truly separate. They never break away from consciousness. I said they are outside of consciousness. They are and they are not. And what do I mean by that? Nothing can exist outside of source. It is constantly expanding, so nothing is ever outside of it. All it's done is within its existence, it's fragmented its consciousness, But that consciousness doesn't truly exist outside of it. Nothing exists outside of it. That is why it needs to have these various forms of feedback. Maybe a comparison would be, am I okay? And you pinch yourself. Am I awake? Am I dreaming? You pinch yourself. That's a different part of your body, but it's still your body. It's your nervous system feeding back information. Yep, I'm here. It's the same thing. It's a part of you, just like each one of those little fragments is a part of the consciousness. But it's able to separate out its consciousness for the benefit of the greater consciousness, the central consciousness that is getting that information from all of these fragments. Little fragments that mirror back their experiences that this consciousness is continually learning about itself through each one of those. The other thing I want to say about those little fragments is that you will hear people talk about as you journey along that we live in a holographic universe. Now, I don't know if you understand how a hologram works, but the thing about a hologram is that the entire thing is in any one piece. If you take a piece of a hologram, the entire hologram is in each piece. No matter how many pieces you take, the entire hologram is in every piece. No matter how tiny the piece, the entire hologram is in it. So, what does this mean for you? It means that the sum total of Source, all of God, all of the divine, all of what the universe is in you, because you're a holographic fragment. So all of it is in you, and everything that exists is in it. So if everything that exists is within the one Source, God, and all of it is in you being a holographic piece, then everything is in you. You are everything, and everything is you. Had I said that in the beginning, I probably would have blown your mind. Okay, so I used the examples that I did to kind of move you along step by step so you could get the concept of there being nothing outside of something, and that how that creates a situation to, well, how do I know myself? And then once we got past that barrier, then to now sweep everything back in and say, so we're all one thing though. And this is why you're not separate. When you understand this, as we go forward and we start talking about other parts of how this all works and other esoteric topics, it will be easier to understand. So the other thing is, I just covered a few Hermetic principles there and some principles of Gnosticism, and they're the same in Jewish mysticism, aka Kabbalah. And I have also heard practitioners of Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry refer to the same exact principles. In fact, Freemasons use a lot of the Hermetic principles. Rosicrucians do too. It's all the same. But anyway, you're actually learning all of this as we go along. And we'll cover those later in detail. But that's enough for now. I know that's a lot to absorb. It's probably a very different way of looking at the world. If you have questions, please put them in the comments so I will know that I need to either do another video or answer a question or expound upon it. So that's all for today. Thanks for listening. Spend a little time thinking about expanding your perspective. This is Tula signing out. Have a great day.